insane that we've reached the point in late-stage capitalism where it's no longer anti-capitalist to critique capitalism. But it's so weird to me how you can sit there and watch straight-up Marxist propaganda for hours and then go out and be like, I should buy a t-shirt of that. Like, the literal premise of the show is how dangerous it is to hyper-commoditize things, because you end up in a world where even your life is a commodity to be bought and sold, and yet people are still like, wouldn't it be super funny if I made a Squid Game Roblox?
There is an inherent irony to anti-capitalist entertainment. Some of the most scathing critiques of big corporations and wealthy elites dominating the functions of our society are produced and funded by the very same types of monopolistic corporations and wealthy elites that these TV shows and movies aim to tackle. And on top of that, these works of entertainment generate hundreds of millions of dollars, if not more, for these companies. Think about Squid Game, an allegory where working class people are crippled by their financial burdens, so they're forced to backstab and climb over each other, all for the entertainment of the ultra-rich. Squid Game was not only produced and funded by Netflix, season 1 alone generated $900 million for the company, with even more enormous amounts of money being generated by various spin-offs such as the Squid Game game show, the Squid Game experience, and Squid Game merchandise, as well as season 2 being released in December 2024 and season 3 set to release in June 2025. This raises the question, can anti-capitalist entertainment truly be anti-capitalist? Squid Game is just one example that raises the question about the value and effectiveness of works of anti-capitalist entertainment, but there are countless other examples. WALL-E, Parasite, Snowpiercer, Succession, A Bug's Life, Don't Look Up, Black Mirror, The Menu, The Lorax. At what point does a work's relationship to a large monopolistic corporation like Netflix or Disney blunt the work's message, if at all? Does the fact that Squid Game generated billions of dollars for Netflix contradict its core anti-capitalist message? For the godless, unpolarized Europeans watching this that don't understand what it means to be a true patriot by getting all of your news and media from one single source, let me explain something to you. Today, 90% of the US media industry is controlled by just 6 massive companies. That means in order to create a successful work of entertainment with any anti-capitalist message whatsoever, it is almost impossible to not go through the channels of large monopolistic corporations. These works then are reliant on large monopolistic corporations such as Netflix and Disney for their funding, their promotion, and their distribution. I want to emphasize how much control these corporations have over the success of any piece of entertainment under their umbrella. Imagine Squid Game except with no funding. What would that look like? The show just wouldn't have been made. Okay, now think about Squid Game except instead of hearing buzz about it,
oh my God, I knew that was you, Hong Sang-yong. Hong Sang-yong, Squid Game. From the Squid Game. You was in the Squid Game, Hong Sang-yong.
Hearing news about it, hearing people talk about it, seeing ads about it, you instead heard nothing at all. Chances are you wouldn't even watch it, right? Okay, now think about Squid Game, except instead of being able to watch it on Netflix, you instead could not watch it anywhere. Again, you would not watch it. Funding, promotion, and distribution provide companies such as Netflix and Disney tremendous amounts of power over each work of media under their umbrella. Let's dig into this though. What is the problem with a work of entertainment being controlled by a large media corporation? Well, besides bringing money to these corporations, which I'll discuss later, being reliant on a large media corporation for funding, promotion, and distribution can dilute the core message of the work of entertainment. We've seen time and time again examples where large media corporations have co-opted and diluted the core message of a work of entertainment for their own benefit. Look to The Lorax. If you haven't read or watched The Lorax, then I will just have to assume that you hate good literature. Classic American literature. And also that you hate having fun, just like Mr. O'Hare.
Whatever leaves town!
But anyways, the Lorax book tells the tale about how a man cuts down all of the trees in his once beautiful valley to gain natural resources for his business that demands permanent growth. transforming the valley into a barren wasteland. It ends with the moral that we have a duty to protect the environment. The story is ultimately an allegory for the pollution and environmental degradation caused by businesses constantly exploiting the Earth's environment for profit, as well as our duty to protect against forces like this. The Lorax animated film, produced by Disney, however, takes the story in a completely different direction, completely watering down its original message. In the film, set after the book in a walled city with no real trees, the antagonist is Mr. O'Hare, who sells bottled air, which is the city's only source of oxygen. The film pins all of the blame of society's problems on this short, funny guy who is comically evil.
Nah, I say let it die. Let it die, let it die. Let it shrivel up and come on, who's with me, huh?
Nobody.
You greedy dirtbag!
In the end, the protagonist defeats Mr. O'Hare, plants a seed, and everybody can't help but sing and break out into dance and live and live happily ever after. Yay! The original message was so lost that the Lorax film even did advertising collaborations with Mazda, which is like the exact opposite of everything that the Lorax stands for. The Lorax would be ashamed.
You greedy dirtbag!
All that to say, the process of Disney translating the original material and message from the book into a film drastically watered down the message and repackaged it so that it would be appealing to the mass audiences, thereby extinguishing any power that the movie may have had as an anti-capitalist allegory. Still a banger film though, I don't care. God, I can't believe I'm doing a serious literary and film analysis on the fucking Lorax. I do think that the dilution of a message based on control by the production studio is a valid concern, but I don't think that this applies as a blanket to all films and TV shows produced by big companies. The value and potency of each message has to be judged per film or per TV show. For example, some works may still retain a very compelling anti-capitalist message, even after being produced and distributed by a big company. And some works may not be altered from their original visions at all, and yet their messages could still be worthless at best and counterproductive at worst, if the writing is poor or imprecise. But that also is another topic that I will discuss later in this video. Some people may argue that the very fact that a work is funded and distributed by a monopolistic media corporation compromises the potency of the anti-capitalist message in and of itself. Maybe the fact that these corporations allow critical works to flourish and succeed on their platforms in the first place demonstrates that these works don't really have any teeth. That is, they don't yet pose any real threat to the system and to the power that these corporations wield. While I understand where this viewpoint comes from, I don't agree. While there are alternatives to producing and distributing a film or TV show with a big company, such as, I don't know, handing out DVDs to everyone you see on the street, these aren't really viable alternatives. And don't tell me that you can use independent media platforms like TikTok and YouTube. I love these places, but they aren't really solving your problem of not working with a big corporation, now are they? But yeah, saying that working with a big media corporation automatically compromises your message is like saying printing books on a printing press compromises their message because then you have to work with the publishing company. Doesn't really make sense. Okay, even if we say that the simple act of working with a big corporation doesn't necessarily blunt the anti-capitalist message of a movie or TV show, isn't it still ironic that these forms of entertainment generate millions and millions of dollars for these media companies? Squid Game Season 1 made $900 million for Netflix off of new subscribers alone. Succession brought in $850 million in revenue for HBO, and WALL-E grossed $533 million for Disney at the box office. And God knows how much money these companies made off of WALL-E Land at Disneyland, Succession merch, and the godforsaken Squid Game Halloween costumes that you see at every goddamn club and Halloween party in the nation. With all that in mind, some of you may be asking, isn't it ironic that the very movies and TV shows which condemn society's overall overrun by unbridled consumerism and corporatism are generating hundreds of millions of dollars for large monopolistic corporations by appealing to the hyperconsumption of American society. Well, I guess when you put it like that, then yes, I do see the irony. It is ironic that TV shows and movies with anti-capitalist messages have the potential to generate disgusting amounts of money for corporations such as Netflix, Disney, and HBO. But I don't think that necessarily harms their overall message. Squid Game, Parasite, Snowpiercer, Succession, A Bug's Life, the fucking Lego Movie, all generated ungodly amounts of money for their respective media companies. And yet, they are still damn good works of art, all with coherent, moving, and at times, surprisingly blatant anti-capitalist worldviews. And sure, these works may help propagate the very thing that they fight against, but is the solution then to simply not create works with radical messages? That isn't satisfying, because what then is there to challenge the current system, the status quo? Nothing. We have to remember that in today's society, it is almost impossible to distribute a message, any message, without using the existing infrastructure, without engaging with the current system as we know it. To say that the anti-capitalist message of A Bug's Life, to take any example, is ineffective because it made money for Disney is like saying factory workers who advocate to unionize aren't effective because they also generate money for the factory owner through their labor. We exist in a world that is designed to benefit the interests of capital. I will say though that it won't always be true that a work of entertainment simultaneously generates revenue for a large corporation and maintains the integrity of its message. Like when the creator of the movie or TV show is deliberately using an anti-capitalist message or a washed down version of that message in order to generate the most money possible. For example, going back to the Lorax and its Mazda advertisement. I honestly have no fucking idea what was going through the creators' minds that would make them think that partnering with a car company would be a good idea for the film, but this is such a bad look. You're kind of giving away the game that you do not care at all about the Lorax's original message about environmental degradation, and in reality, only care about squeezing as much money as possible from the average American consumer.
You greedy dirtbag!
Kind of like the fucking Onceler in his prime himself. Still a banger film though. Kind of makes me want to break out into dance. Catharsis is the process of releasing strong or repressed emotions, thereby providing relief from those emotions. Watching a film or a TV show, catharsis. There's a fucking dog barking. Catharsis is the process of releasing strong or repressed emotions, thereby providing relief from those emotions. Watching a film or a TV show that expresses a cutting critique of society or that conveys a message that speaks to and resonates with the hardships and suffering that folks are enduring as a result of our economic system can provide a feeling of catharsis for the audience. We've all experienced it when a film or TV show's message hits home, when the characters are struggling with the same struggles that you face every day. It can feel like the filmmaker is speaking directly to you, saying, hey, I understand you. I understand what you're going through. And that can be very powerful. And it can be powerful in multiple different ways. Firstly, it can provide a sense of catharsis that raises the collective consciousness of the audience and everyone who watches it. After watching a particularly moving film or TV show, let's take WALL-E for example, because I'm pretty sure most people have watched it, or at least know what it's about so that I don't have to worry about spoiling the plot. And if you haven't watched it, then you hate the environment. After watching WALL-E, you might think, yeah, this movie really hits home. It really describes the direction America is moving in perfectly. People are always glued to their devices and nobody cares about protecting the environment anymore. And that is going to lead to the destruction of our beloved donut-shaped planet. We should do something about that. That's an example of catharsis moving people towards collective action and changing society for the better. On the other hand, catharsis can also move people in the opposite direction, creating an impotent and immobile society. Going back to the Wall-E example, after watching the movie, you might similarly think, yeah, this movie really hits home. It really describes the direction America is moving in perfectly. People are always glued to their devices and nobody cares about protecting the environment anymore. And that is going to lead to the destruction of our beloved chicken wing-shaped planet. It's so great to have a movie talking about this important issue. Well, I guess I'm gonna go back to doom scrolling on the couch without doing anything about it. This form of catharsis serves to placate the viewers rather than motivating them to action towards bettering the society and world that they live in. The catharsis of an anti-capitalist message that speaks to and acknowledges the audience's struggles and experiences can serve to either motivate and mobilize people, or it can serve to placate them. The work's effectiveness then relies not just on its merits and the power of the message itself, but also on each individual audience member and in what ways they engage with and absorb the message. Another point of contention for anti-capitalist entertainment is imperfect messaging. I'll split this into two sections: nuance and poor writing. First, nuance. In order to create films and TV shows that feel more human, that are more relatable, that are more compelling, filmmakers often use what I like to call nuance. I know that you YouTube watchers out there naturally have no idea what I'm talking about and would prefer if the filmmakers just explain their message to you with no context and no nuance in the format of a 23-minute YouTube essay. But this is not how real life works. Real life is not simply black and white. Real life is not simply good versus evil and no in between. So to create a work that is true to life, that is genuine in its storytelling, filmmakers will often introduce nuance and ambiguity into their work. For example, the villain may have some redeeming qualities. The protagonist may have to commit horrible acts or make impossible decisions in order to achieve their ultimate goals. And as a result of this nuance, audiences may take away the wrong message. In fact, they may take away the exact opposite message to that envisioned by the filmmakers. Take The Wolf of Wall Street, for example, a film that criticizes the excesses of Jordan Belfort, an unscrupulous stock trader on Wall Street, as well as the system that he works in. The movie employs many nuances to get across its message, including making the narrator, Belfort, unreliable at best and a complete liar at worst. And as a result, many people, men in particular, watch The Wolf of Wall Street and think, wow, Belfort is so cool. I wish I could have enough money to live that extravagant lifestyle, when this is precisely the opposite of the intended message, that unrestrained profit-seeking and living excessively and unscrupulously like Belfort is contemptible and will ultimately lead to your downfall. Because the message is not overly explicit, and because all works of entertainment are open to interpretation, audiences end up taking away the wrong lessons from it, in effect contradicting the original intent of the message. This, however, I believe to be an acceptable trade-off in pursuit of artistry and a compelling, relatable story. Audiences taking your message the wrong way is practically inevitable, and you cannot possibly control what everyone takes away from your work. Nor should you. This problem is completely separate from poor writing, which I believe is a much more damaging issue than using nuance in a film or TV show. It's much harder to have a coherent anti-capitalist message if your writing fucking sucks. I think this goes without saying. There's an argument to be made that every instance of entertainment in the world we live in today is contributing to a society of spectacle, a sort of modern-day bread and circuses that distracts us from the real societal issues that impact and harm us every day. A society where we are all atomized, separated from our friends and communities, such that there is no avenue for collective organizing. I guess I would be contributing to that society. What about independent media like TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, and other online platforms? Creators on these platforms have the exact same problems as their large production counterparts, albeit perhaps to a lesser extent. You may be asking, how can this be when creators have the ability to just post whatever the hell comes to their mind at any given time? Yes, creators can and do just post whatever bullshit comes to their mind at any given time, but they are still using platforms hosted by massive corporations. Whether they post on TikTok, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, their content is still beholden to the whims of the big companies that run these social media sites. Not only does their content generate enormous amounts of ad revenue for these companies, their anti-capitalist message isn't even necessarily safe from co-opting and outside influences. Like all forms of media, creators are beholden to their audiences, but the relationship between independent creator and audience is much more close, intimate, and dynamic than a filmmaker's relationship to their audience. Whereas filmmakers work for years creating their films and receive audience feedback only after it's been released, independent creators often publish multiple videos every month, going through a constant cycle of publishing videos and then receiving feedback, publishing videos, receiving feedback, countless times throughout the year. As such, the whims and critiques of the audience are much more likely and more capable of influencing the message of the creator. To a certain extent, this is a good thing, regulating the discourse that's out there. But for the unprincipled creator, this can easily water down their message without them even thinking about it. Relatedly, creators are also beholden to the social media algorithms that dictate which of their posts are successful and which aren't. In order to create a successful video with a coherent anti-capitalist message that reaches a broad audience, creators must take into account the whims of the algorithm, scripting their videos, filming it, and editing it in such a way that maximizes engagement and watch time. If they don't, their video will likely perform poorly, thereby curbing all of its effectiveness as an anti-capitalist vehicle. And as a result, these two phenomena can have a sort of self-co-opting effect, where creators deliberately structure their content and their messages in such a way so that it's looked upon favorably by their audiences and by the social media algorithm. Audience engagement and algorithmic success become the priority at the expense of the coherence and potency of the creator's anti-capitalist message. Now, that's not to say that every creator and work out there has been co-opted by the audience and the algorithm. It just takes a lot of conviction, a lot of balls to remain unswayed by these forces. This is where I land. Yes, entertainment with a principled and coherent anti-capitalist message can be a genuine force for systemic change, in the same way that folks who work in a factory can unionize, fight for better pay, and fight for a change to the system. Alright, let me know what you think, like, and see you next time.